Happy Saturday. I am KHOU 11 meteorologist Kim Castro based out of Houston, Texas. It is Saturday, September 17th, and we have just received the latest update from the National Hurricane Center for Tropical Storm Fiona. So I'm going to show you some of the updates and what we're seeing on infrared and visible satellite imagery. So what we can see is a certain organization and strengthening that has differentiated itself from what we saw yesterday. So Fiona is certainly gaining intensity and gaining a bit of strength, and it is slowing down in speed. And that will allow for it to absorb some of those resources, some of those warm water fuels that it will need to continue to grow and potentially escalate as we go forward in time. So right now it is moving west at 8 miles an hour and it still has maximum sustained wind speeds at 60 miles an hour. The noticeable changes that we're seeing between yesterday and today is a far better alignment between the center of circulation and the area of convective activity. It was getting pretty sheared apart yesterday, very displaced between that rotational area and the area of thunder shower activity. Now we're seeing the thunder showers catching up with that center of circulation, and it is certainly continuing to grow. We can see some of those cloud tops beginning to shoot up there, and it is gaining height and gaining strength too. Now with this intensity, we are seeing the potential for some very heavy rain this weekend. That's going to be the predominant threat for the Lesser Antilles, for the U.S. Virgin Islands, for the British Virgin Islands, and especially for Puerto Rico. You can see the big swath of rain that's forecasted into the early part of this coming work week for the next 3 days, upwards of 10 inches of rain. So that will bring significant problems when it comes to mudslides for the higher terrain, especially for the Dominican Republic, and then flash flooding for the lower elevations too. So that's going to be something we will need to watch very closely this weekend. In terms of impactful wind, it is almost certainly being experienced in the Leeward Islands this weekend. Same deal for the Virgin Islands, and then Puerto Rico has a good chance to see those at least tropical storm winds as we head into this afternoon and into this evening. We could potentially see hurricane force winds because the intensity will continue to build. So what's the timing on these stronger wind gusts? Well, by this afternoon, Puerto Rico will be impacted by that stronger wind, and then as we head into tomorrow morning, the wind impacts will be reaching the Dominican Republic too. So what kind of watches, warnings do we have up right now? Well, the areas in orange, tropical storm warnings. You'll notice Puerto Rico is now under a hurricane warning, and the reason for that is because, as I mentioned, as Fiona continues to make its progression closer to Puerto Rico, it will start to gain intensity and become close to a hurricane. It's expected to become a Category 1 hurricane a little bit later on tomorrow, but definitely getting close to that intensity there. And location is everything, not just for real estate, but of course for this tropical system, because it is turning towards the south of Puerto Rico. You can see the area of highest impacts, the dirty side of the what will be expected to become a hurricane, will be favoring Puerto Rico. So the northeast quadrant looking to push in quite a bit of rain to that area as we progress through this weekend. As we head into the latter part of Sunday and early part of Monday, we'll have passed through the Dominican Republic, and there it's also looking to make quite a bit of impacts when it comes to excessive rainfall. But you'll notice by this point it will be on the eastern side of the Dominican Republic, so it's being impacted by the southwest quadrant of this tropical storm for the most part, at least the west side of the storm. So impacts will be reduced from what Puerto Rico is expected to experience. As we continue on the trajectory, the cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center, we're seeing Turks and Caicos being impacted by the early portion of this coming work week, and again, heavy rainfall will be the biggest impact. Now with this cone, we'll notice it continues to consistently deviate away from the continental U.S., so it is expected to curve north and then eventually towards the northeast, potentially getting close to the island nation of Bermuda. Now, spaghetti plots have also been consistently wanting to turn Tropical Storm Fiona, and we're seeing even bigger consensus, higher agreement with this latest model run. Almost all of the spaghetti plots wanting to take it in that direction, and a large reason for that is because of the strengthening that we've seen with Tropical Storm Fiona a little bit later on. Had it maintained a little bit of less organization, less strengthening, well, then it wouldn't be as influential or as influenced by the upper level steering currents. But because it is growing and expected to become a Category 1 hurricane, at that point, it is in the vicinity of the upper level patterns that would steer it in a certain direction. And we definitely have favorable upper level patterns to take this away from the U.S. as we go into this coming work week. So we have 2 areas of high pressure. Now that's going to steer it first to the north, and this trough in front will eventually steer it towards the northeast and really pull it up and away from the east coast and take it into the northern Atlantic and into open water, when it is expected to again strengthen into potentially a Category 2 hurricane. Now, because the cone has shifted a little bit further towards the east, it is now not expected to encounter the disruption we thought previously it could encounter, which would be the highest peak in the Caribbean, the Pico Duarte, which is in the Dominican Republic, 10,000 feet of elevation. That would certainly have impacts on making it less of a strong system and potentially having less impacts from the upper level steering currents on where the motion could be. Now, because this has shifted, it is looking to be steered by those upper level patterns away from the U.S. Now, I will mention that the cone of uncertainty is only accurate 2/3 of the time, so we will continue to watch that closely to see if there are any shifts as we move forward in time. Looking at the rest of the Atlantic basin, aside from Tropical Storm Fiona, there is an area that we are watching in the Central Atlantic that has a 20% chance of development over the next 5 days. And this other area of storms has now been reduced to no worries for the next 2 or 5 days. It is just open water area of storms. Here is a rundown of what we've been seeing for the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. Now, if we do see that area of 20% probability continue to show signs that it could develop, that would take the next name, Gaston, on the list. Next update from the National Hurricane Center, the next full one will come in a little later on this afternoon, and we will continue to show you the track of the storm and potential impacts with it for all of our friends and family that are in the Caribbean, in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, as they are bracing for some heavy rain impacts as we go throughout this weekend. Now, I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. These are my handles. You can find me on any which one of these platforms. I will be posting updates as I get them, and you can also just reach out to me and ask me any questions if you have them. Until then, have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.